kunja kwa mkula huko tuwena kuchita machawe tumaliza nthawi yabwino then off we go. Alright, so my apologies because we were supposed to have this in the morning after we failed on Monday. Was it on Monday, right? Yeah, we had power failure on Monday. Then we rescheduled for today, this morning. Unfortunately, I think we had some communication breakdown. We didn't manage to communicate properly. Yeah? So that's why we are doing it this time around. So probably some other time we may also have the same situation that instead of having a class, maybe we are having an interruption. At least we will try to communicate as fast as possible so that we should always be on the same page. And Madam Class Rep, please, that's your responsibility. See to it that at least if I communicate with the rest also in time. Yeah, so that is fine. Alright, so here what we are discussing today is a continuation of this concept, what we call supply chain service management. So we introduced this concept last time, so we are continuing with it. So the whole idea behind this concept saying supply chain service management is to make sure that we are offering those services or we are executing our activities in the supply chain as a service. So to begin with, somebody can ask to say, what do we mean by a service, or what is a service? So we can say that a service is, in other words, an act of doing something for somebody. An act of doing something for someone is either you can do it freely or in exchange for some obligations, right? You offer a service, so you do something to somebody and you expect some maybe monetary obligations or maybe some other favors, because you have done that something to the other person. Or else you can just do something to somebody and you are not expecting anything. That is still a service. So it's an act of doing something for somebody else, right? For example, what I'm doing here, we can call it a service. I'm giving something to maybe some other people, in this case to you. Probably I may be expecting something from those who hired me here, or maybe from you, or else I cannot expect anything at all. But as long as I'm doing something to somebody, that is, we call it a service. Now, in a supply chain, much as we've been seeing that there are always a number of activities that always take place there, and there are always a number of players that participate in the execution of those various activities. So by executing a particular activity, that one we call it a service, despite the fact that there is something that you are expecting in return. But the fact that you are doing that one to the other person, you are offering a service. So we can look at it in this way, like we are in a supply chain setup, and probably we are a distributor, right? This player here that we're talking about is a distributor. His activities involve getting supplies, maybe from the manufacturer or the producer, and supplying his customers. By doing that, of course, he's making profits along the way, but that is again a service because he's doing something for someone. In this case, he's doing something for his customers. He's supplying them, isn't it? So it's a service. Now, why are we saying this execution of these activities should be seen as a service? It should be seen as a service because if it is being taken as a service, there is always dedication, there is always efficiency, and there is always effectiveness. Unlike the situation whereby we are just looking at it as an activity that will earn me something. Of course I can still do it, but that spirit of dedication probably cannot be there. That spirit of effectiveness cannot be there, or efficiency cannot be there, because my target there is only money. What am I going to get after I've done this? So that commitment is not mostly always there. Of course there is a need for motivation, this much we understand, but still more. The whole idea should be to save or to do something for somebody or to help someone. We'll get on that one. So only if you take it as a service, that's when dedication, effectiveness can always be there, transparency and all can be there. It's like here when I'm discussing with you, I know at the end of the day somebody will give me some money. But now if my focus is just to get money, probably I can just come here, I do things, blah blah blah, off I go. I don't care about you people here. I don't care about what I'm delivering here, because at the end of the day I know that I'm getting something. So there is no efficiency and effectiveness in the outcome of what I'm doing. But if I take it as a service, okay, these are my friends, as in Zanga and now I invest in which no matter how long it will take, I invest my and all those things. Like as a service, despite the fact that there is a monetary benefit that I'm going to get, service effectiveness. So this one noise that we're making here is to emphasize the point that in a supply chain management should be considered as a service. Only if you consider it as a service, there can be this effectiveness and efficiency. All right, now just like we saw last time in this supply chain management, since in that particular chain we say there are always individual activities, a lot of activities that do take place. Each and every one of these individual activities has to be taken seriously and has to be monitored. So this act of monitoring the individual activities is now what we call the management of the supply chain, right? Each and every activity that is taking place in there, it has to be well monitored. Are we doing it perfectly? What are its weaknesses and what are its strengths, and where can we improve? That is in those individual activities. So by monitoring, by evaluating it, that is you are managing. For example, we have an issue to do with, we say, distribution. Before we do the distribution, there are also some functions that are associated with distributors, isn't it? Because normally they have their own warehouses, probably they may have transport facilities, they may have some other systems that they have in their organization as distributors. Each one of those functions has to be well monitored, and people have to make sure that at least each one of them is being done efficiently and effectively. So by doing that, that's what we call monitoring. So of course there are a number of those activities. Of course, probably we may not dwell much on each one of them, but we have them here. They've been outlined, and of course, as I've always saying, there is a link here of which you can follow through and see the details. Now, in a supply chain, much as we say this one is all about making sure that the goods are taken from the point of origin to the consumer, there is a flow, the physical flow of these goods from here to here. Normally, that is the case. There is always a physical flow of the goods from this end to this end. Now, this act of making sure that the goods are flowing from here to here, there is one single function that is part of the entire supply chain, and that single function is now what we call logistics. So logistics is one function that is part of the supply chain, and logistics is the function that ensures that the goods are able to move from that end to the other end. Now this single function called logistics in every business all over is regarded as the backbone of the supply chains. Is the backbone of the supply chains. Why are we saying so? We can have a producer, probably the primary producer, that side, say a farmer, the one who is producing raw materials for us, and we have a producer here, we have a distributor, and of course the final consumers. But if we are not able to get those materials from the original point, the primary producer, if they are just stuck there, no matter how good they are, no matter how beautiful they are useless. Similarly, if we have managed to get them there to the producer's place, and the producer has managed to transform those materials into finished products, but if we are not able to get these finished products to the final consumer, then what we've done is useless. So the entire chain will say is now and void. It hasn't done anything. So it means this mechanism of making sure that the goods are able to flow is one of the most critical and most important functions in the supply chain, and this is logistics. Now, seeing that there is always competition, the business involvement so far is becoming more and more competitive by the end of the day, due to globalization, overpopulation, and many other factors. business players are always competing over the customers. Every business player is always competing there in the market. So in short, we can say there is always stiff competition on the market. Now, seeing that there is always this stiff competition on the market, business players are always becoming more conscious of the need for speedy and quick delivery of whatever products they are producing or whatever goods they are producing. So you know that, okay, the market is there by Antangire, and probably the producers are here, and you have multiple producers here, whereas the customers are located the other side. Definitely or automatically, these producers here will be scrambling for that market. So the one who reaches the customers probably faster than the other has chances of grabbing a better share of the market. Of course, they cannot grab the entire market, but probably a better share. So it's like if there are 4, 5 or 10 players this side, each one of them will be trying their best to make sure that I reach there quicker. So the act of moving your goods to that market, you involve this function that we're talking about here, logistics. So a logistics function is becoming now already it is one of those most important functions, but now its importance is growing each and every day. So there is always this what we call logistics vision in an organization. So when you are saying logistics vision in an organization, this is the situation whereby those leaders of the organization, the managers, executives, they have to be, they are always now becoming more conscious of the importance of this one, and they put measures in place to make sure that at least they stand a competitive edge in the market through logistics. Now, there has always been this confusion where when we mention the word logistics, people always associate it with transportation, to say, okay, logistics equals transportation, or transportation equals logistics. So matters, transportation is also part of this logistics, but logistics as a concept, it involves a lot of things. So it has its own components in it. It has its own functions inside it. We'll get on that one. So matters, we are seeing that logistics is a component in supply chain, the entire supply chain, and we are saying it's the backbone of the supply chains. But now, within logistics itself as a concept, it also has its own components that will make it complete. We together on that one. All right. So to understand it, we can look at it as a process. So logistics is a process that ensures the physical flow of goods or products from point A to the end point. The process that ensures the flow of goods or materials from this end to this other end within the supply chain, right? Now, since we are saying it is a process, when something is referred to as a process, it means it has some stages or it has some steps. So if all those stages or all those steps are connected together and they are complete, it's now when we say this is a process. It's now a complete process. So this logistics as a process, it has the following stages or functions that always take place in there. The first thing is information flow. That's the first thing. The second thing is probably order processing. So in this case, let us just imagine, or let us have this example in mind to say we are producers and we have our customers there. So we want to understand this concept of logistics by looking at these two entities, the producer and the customer. And this customer should be probably a distributor or a wholesaler, whoever. But here we are starting from the producer. So we should understand how it works by looking at these two. The first thing is what we call information flow. First and foremost, there should always be communication. And this time around, this communication will come from the customer, who is the producer or the wholesaler. This person will probably make a call, or else is going to send an email, whether an SMS or whichever way, or maybe he's going to send his messengers on a bicycle coming to us, the producers. You know what? We need ABCD. But first of all, what did you have? Can you give us a quotation, please? Right? So this one is asking quotation from us based on what he wants and what we offer. Now, by responding to this person, it's like now communication has started. Now we are communicating. That's information flow. That's the first thing of the process. So we are exchanging whatever we can exchange here. We send the quotation to them. They see the quotation. Then they press an order to say, okay, now see, since we have seen the quotation of what you're offering and of course your prices or your rates, can you please supply us so. So he is going to indicate, or they are going to indicate the specifications or the quantity and everything what they want. So this first stage here is now what we call information flow. That's the most important part of logistics. Even if it is a kind of an informal business, because probably this kind of setup is a formal business kind of. But now, even in informal businesses, you have your building project somewhere, and she is having a truck, and you need somebody to drop bricks for you. You go to her, you say, you know what, madam, I know you have a truck here. I need help from you. Please, mungatumenya mara azanditengere njema, kamna njenga, you know. So, by doing this, then that madam says, okay, chabu, mufuna njelo zanu zatengere it. Now you are saying, no, maybe Saturday. Then you start negotiating, or how much per trip, whatever you're doing there. Service yeni you're going to do inafike pachimake yeni mufuna niyo, but ababa makodi adani yeah. So step 1 has been done. Then we have step number 2, which is order processing. Mind you, we are trying to understand it by looking at the two entities involved. So order processing. Now, in order processing, there are also a number of activities that are involved in there. Once you have received an order, you look at it and you say, okay, so this is what they want. This is quantity, and of course, these are specifications. So you start sorting out, you go to the warehouses, you start what we call picking, and of course, packing and packaging, and of course, arranging for shipment. I'm just those are some of the processes on stage number 2, in stage number 2, which is order processing. Then after this order processing, we have this what we call shipping. Shipping is another step that is also involved in logistics. Now, in shipping, there are also a number of things that do happen there, a number of functions that happen there, a number of documentations that are there, because it's not just a matter of getting your stuff and put them in a container and say off you go. There are a number of documentations that need to be always arranged between the one who is shipping the stuff and probably the shipping company that is handling your goods. So there are documents to do insurance, the payments, and of course many others that probably we are going to see as we go along in the process. But this happens in step number 3. And mind you, this is step number 3 is part of the logistic process. Now we have the actual transportation itself. We have transportation of these goods. Now this is when you involve probably the carrier who is going to carry these goods physically. Is either a trucker, somebody who is running probably some trucks, or else probably a vessel if you are to use maritime transportation, or else you are going to use air transportation, railway transportation, etc. So this is the physical physical movement of these goods, because from the beginning you were exchanging information, you were been doing these other processes. Now you have reached to this 4th stage, which is transportation. So you can see that the transportation is just a component within this process that we call logistics. Now the goods have been transported, and to the other end, there is an issue to do with the handling. The goods have to be received and of course being taken to the warehouse or to wherever the goods are being taken to, or the final destination in short. Now, all these stages as we have seen them, there are always people, there are always players, and there are always experts that are involved in each and every one of these stages. So, meaning to say, for the entire process to be successful, effective, and efficient, the process called logistics, it means all these functions that we have seen, they have to be executed with utmost care and utmost management. So there is a need for a management of each one of these functions. So if each and every one of these functions is being taken care of, is being monitored, is being managed properly, at the end of the day, we will be able to say the logistics function was efficient or was effective. But if one of these functions was not properly executed, the chances are the entire logistics as a concept or as a function will be a flop. It will flop. So, let me read this one for you here. Logistics is kind of like a summary, right? Logistics is a collection of processes involved in moving goods internally or from the buyer to the seller. That simple sentence is making a lot of sense, I think, related to what I've said. Logistics is a collection of processes involved in moving goods internally or from the buyer to the seller. So, matters, we have seen that there are always a number of functions and a number of activities happening in here. In short, we can say logistics is a complex process. Logistics is always a complex process. So, logistics managers are now responsible for overseeing such complex processes. Now, as we can see here, we are in an organization like this one. We are saying we are producers, but and again we have a logistics function within that organization, and of course we appointed someone who is working as a logistics manager. But if you look closely, looking at the functions that we have seen here, we can agree to say this logistics manager that we have appointed does not work in isolation, does not work alone. He is always dependent on some other people also, from some other departments also. Mind you, in an organization like this one, we have the procurement department, we have the sales department. So, when we are buying things from our suppliers, or else when we are supplying our customers, it means that there are specific departments that are responsible for that. For example, if we are buying, then we have a procurement department, isn't it? But now, for the procurement department to successfully execute whatever they were procuring, they will still need somebody to do with logistics. So in short, what I'm trying to look at here is there is always an interconnection in an organization. There is always an interdependency. So those who are responsible for logistics, they do not just do things alone or else in isolation. They also coordinate with other players within the organization or maybe in the sister organizations. So they work hand in hand with those responsible for procurement. They work hand in hand with those responsible for sales. And of course, they work hand in hand with those responsible for probably transportation, the fleet managers and all. Because one single person cannot handle all the things at once. Transporting also, but it's part of logistics. Those that are responsible for warehousing, we have warehouses managers there. They also have to do their part, which is in line with the needs of the logistics managers or the logistics manager, because whatever the logistics guys are doing also at some point has something to do with warehousing functionalities. So in short, logistics functions are always complex, but for them to be executed successfully, there's always a need for proper coordination between various players within the organization. Why? Because there is this what we call interdependency. So, in summary, I would say logistics is the process of moving goods from point A to point B. The success demands minute attention to detail, from packaging to warehousing to transportation. There is an important statement here. The success of logistics depends, or it demands, minute attention to details, or in other ways, it demands utmost attention to small details. Each and every step has to be given the attention it demands. Just like the small processes that I mentioned, each one of those processes has to be given much attention. You have to follow whatever is happening, where the weaknesses are, you have to fix those weaknesses, etc., etc. Poor logistics will dent a company's bottom line. In fact, it can be crippling because logistics is the physical manifestation of a transaction. Without it, there is no movement of cash from customer to seller. Without the movement of goods, then there is no transaction. They cannot give you money to say, no, yet it's introduced. So you have to make sure that Karungu akuenda from without this one, there is no transaction, there is no cash exchanging hands. Logistics based practices vary depending on the nature of the business and its product decisions, but the process is always complex. So automation is the key to efficiency. Now let me mention something here on automation is the key to efficiency. We are saying the success of the supply chain depends on whether the goods have reached the final destination. So once the goods have reached the final destination, we may say the whole process was a success, and of course logistics was a success. So it means there is always a need for whoever is having a hand in the chain to follow through and see to it that the goods or the product has reached the final destination. So this calls for what we call tracking. The goods have to be tracked. You have to make sure that at least the goods have reached where they were supposed to go. Now, that is a complex processing. You are sending your goods to Brazil. You have passed your goods to some guy. Probably you have filled your goods in a container, and some guy has carried that container to the port in Dar es Salaam. From there, he has loaded the container onto the ship or the vessel. Now, the ship is on its way to Brazil. It is almost not possible and not practical that for the sake of making sure that the goods are really in good condition and they are reaching the destination, it is not practical that each and every now and then you'll be calling the guys involved. You call the truck guy, hey man, where are you? Okay. I mean, it is always very difficult. So there are systems that are being devised, that are being employed these days, whereby you'll be able to track your goods or to track the entire system, how it is working. That is the logistics functions, how they are functioning. So since the functions of logistics are always complex, automation, the use of some technologies in various activities is always a must, is always a key to do away with these complexities, to deal with these complexities. For example, in warehousing, we always have what we call warehousing management systems. These are technologies that are there to manage the warehouses, to help you to understand how much stock you have in the warehouses and probably how much do you need to restock the warehouses, etc., etc. So it is difficult for you to do that manually, or your boys to do that manually. It is tedious, time consuming, and probably with a lot of inefficiencies. So to make sure that those inefficiencies are minimized or are removed, there is a need for players to involve some technologies that we are referring to as automation. So in short, in conclusion, logistics is a subcomponent of the supply chain. Now, the role of logistics. Of course, the role of logistics that we're going to see here, probably we already have an idea because it is based on what we have already discussed here. So much as we see that the essence of a business is to exchange goods or services for money or trade, logistics now is the path those goods and services take to complete the transaction. So we have already discussed this. But now, For this logistics, this function that we are talking about here, to be more effective, there are some supporting pillars. There are some pillars that support logistics for it to be more effective and efficient. So, quickly, we are going to look at those pillars that make logistics more effective. One pillar here is material sourcing. Now, material sourcing involves more than finding the lowest cost supplier for raw materials used in manufacturing. Logistics includes calculating and managing contributing factors and costs such as backorder delays, competitor priority, and locals, and so on and so forth. Let us say something on material sourcing. We are saying our logistics needs to be more effective and we need some pillars. That's what we are saying. Now one of them is material sourcing. Material sourcing, when you are sourcing the materials to be used probably in the production of some other materials, or else you just want to distribute further this other side, there are always a number of factors that are always put into consideration. One of those factors is probably the cost of those materials. Most of the times, logistics managers, in collaboration with procurement managers, they always take the cost of those materials as a priority, because the priority of each and every business is to minimize the cost as much as possible, at the same time maximizing output. This is normally what is in the mind of each and every business player. So that being the case, you find that the logistics managers or the procurement entities, they always focus on cost reduction, and they always say, okay, let us buy something at a lowest cost possible. At the end of the day, we will maximize output. This is one thing that they should always, and they always put in mind when they are sitting down discussing, planning on how to get the materials, how to identify suppliers. This is one thing they always think about. But here we are told that for an effective logistics, this is not enough. This is not enough. Let's look at a situation whereby there are two suppliers. One supplier is probably in Kasungu, and there is another supplier just here at Kanenga. Now, the supplier in Kasungu is selling probably the materials that you are looking for. They are in specific units. So in this case, they are packed in boxes. So per box, that guy in Kasungu is selling at 1,000 per box. The other one, at Kanengo, is selling the same probably at 500 watt per box, right? Definitely, wait a minute, let's put it vice versa. The one at Kanengo is selling at 1,000, but the other one in Kasungu is selling at 500 watt. Now you people, you are sitting down here, you are discussing, guys, how do we source the materials? The chances are high that quick one, somebody will say, no, let's go and get in Kasungu because they are cheaper that side, isn't it? But someone will say, no, it will not make sense. Why? Because if you go to Kasungu, buy this box and bring it here, though we are buying it at 500 watt, how about the transportation costs and all? By the time we are reaching here, the cost of this box is no longer going to be 500 watts. Probably it's going to be 2,000 or 3,000 watts. So this decision will not make any economic sense. We better buy here at Kanenga, right? Here, these guys, what they are discussing, they want to reduce the costs. The amount of money they are going to spend on this kind of material. But hey, somebody will still come in and say, wait a minute, why can't we employ this what we call the economies of scale? We go there and buy in Kasungu, but if we buy in large quantities, definitely the transportation costs are going to be lessened. At the end of the day, we are still going to make, we are going to save some money, unlike if we could have bought there by Kanenga. So those decisions those are some of the factors logistic managers and procurement entities, they always put into consideration other than the initial cost of that particular material or that particular product. The initial cost of that particular product can be higher or can be lower, that's fine. But some other factors also, they need to be taken into consideration. Why? All what we want is effective logistics as a function. Another thing is, someone can say, no, don't worry. You are saying somebody at Galengo is selling at 1,000 watt, somebody in Kasungu is selling at 500 watt. In here I'm going to sell you at 400 watts or 300 watts. Definitely everybody will say, Chimachero, I think muntu ena kumugulanda uti nduyu, because at least mtengo wake ndio chepera hapo kumaso sali kuzali akula lipanje wa komweva. But now you are looking at effective execution of these functionalities here. How fast is that supplier going to supply you? That's another question to also put into consideration. Apart from the costs are there, but probably is the person going to deliver in time? Because probably we need these materials maybe by tomorrow so that we can produce something and deliver. Is this person capable of delivering within this period that we are demanding? So that one again is a point to think about. So materials sourcing is a function that when is given proper consideration, logistics function can be a success. But if proper consideration is not being put in place, the entire logistics as a function can be a flop. You can get something at a cheaper cost, but now the person fails to deliver. Then it means the whole thing is nothing, no work has been done. Anyway, that was pillar number 1. Then we have this other pillar, effective transportation. Effective transportation. Now, we are saying logistics is the core or is the center of supply chains. Now this time around, we are looking at transportation as a core of logistics, or transportation as now the center of logistics. We said logistics involves information flow, IBCD, and all the things that we have seen. But at the end of the day, we have transportation. So transportation is the key or is the core of logistics. Why? Because this is where the physical movement of goods occurs. The physical movement of goods occurs through this what we call transportation. Therefore, for an effective logistics as a function, there is always a need for this activity or this function called transportation to be taken seriously and to be well managed. Now, there are always various modes of transportation that we know. We have, of course, road transportation where we use the trucks. Then we have railway transportation where we use the trains, the wagons and all. Then we have maritime transportation where we use the vessels at sea. And of course we have air transportation where we use aircrafts, drones and all. Right? Now, for an effective movement of your goods, it depends on a number of factors that are going to guide you on what kind of mode of transportation to use or what mode of transportation to be used. Now, there are reasons or there are a lot of factors that we put into consideration. One, the nature of the goods. The nature of the goods will guide you as to what mode of transportation to be used. Say the goods that you want to transport are perishables. Definitely you'll be forced to figure out or to use a mode of transportation that will see to it that the goods are able to reach the market probably in a better condition. That's the nature of the goods. Probably the economic value of the goods. For example, on the nature of the goods, let's look at someone who is having a flower farm. Somebody is farming flowers, Maro's flowers. And this person has secured a market in the UK or Germany or elsewhere. Definitely, once you plug your Marwa, you always want to get to the market while the malware is still fresh, isn't it? Now, I don't think you can hire somebody with his container. You get the malwares into the container, and he takes the container to Dar es Salaam. Then from Dar es Salaam, then you put them on the ship off to the UK. It will take maybe probably 2-3 weeks or even a month or two before the containers reach the UK. At what condition are these flowers going to reach the market? They'll be dry or whatever, they'll be spoiled. So, because of the nature of this kind of a product, you use a transport mode which is probably faster, and air transportation in this case can be ideal. And we are also saying there is a need for us to look at the economic value of whatever you are trying to transport. Now, you're transporting something from here to Karonga, or maybe from here to Mzuzu, and you're going to sell probably these bottles of water. You have a box of these ones, and each one of them is 200 watt or 300 watt, and you have a box of these ones. Now you're sending them there. You go there by the airport, you ship them, or you send them to Karonga via air transportation. If you look at the cost involved in transporting these things by air and the value that you're going to realize from this, you find that the decision is not making any economic sense. So there are a number of factors you need to consider. There are things to do with probably the geography of where you are operating. When you're saying the geography, in this case, we look at probably the landforms and how the land is. You want to send things to, we're saying to Karonga. You can try to figure out to say, okay, should I use land transportation? Now, the road is passing through the mountainous landscape. Definitely, it's going to take long for it to reach wherever you're taking the goods to. Whereas, if you use water transportation, probably you're going to reach the destination faster and without much problems. So in this case, you can come up with a decision to say, okay, in this case, looking at the geography, we don't have to use land transportation. In this case, let us use water transportation. These I'm just citing as examples that can guide you through, or that can guide logistics managers when they are making decisions in order to ensure that the logistics as a function is efficient. That was pillar number 2. Then pillar number 3 is order fulfillment. That is pillar number 3. When I was mentioning the processes involved in logistics, I mentioned order processing. So order fulfillment is also an important pillar. So the thing is, as we said, you always need to pay attention to small details. Somebody has placed an order. You have to pay attention to the specifications of what that person is looking for. You have to pay attention to probably the quantity, and of course the condition of whatever the person is demanding. If you pay attention to these ones, you'll be able to fulfill this order. So what happens if you fail to fulfill the order, or else you misunderstood the order that was sent to you? You end up processing an order that is inaccurate. Inaccurate in terms of the quantity and probably the specifications. And at the end of the day, the person will reject the goods, or probably the person is going to return the goods. So you are going to incur some costs also, because the cost of bringing back the goods that are being returned is borne by you. So for you to be okay, now since you have failed to fulfill the order, since you misunderstood what the customer was demanding from you, and at the end of the day you have delivered goods that are not accurate in terms of quantity and specification, and the person is returning, at the end of the day you can say the logistics function here, one function of the logistics was not effective and efficient because you never paid much attention to it. So the entire process for logistics can say not to be effective. Why? Because you missed it, one pillar here. Now another pillar is an effective warehousing. That's another pillar that will ensure that logistics as a function is successful. Warehousing, or effective warehousing. Now, Both short and long-term storage are common parts of logistics planning. So, warehouse management systems also enable logistics planning. So, for example, logistics planners must consider warehouse space availability and special requirements such as cold storage, docking facilities, and proximity to modes of transportation such as rail lines or shipyards. Alright, warehousing as a function also has to be well monitored. It has to be well managed. You know, a warehouse is a facility that helps us to probably store the finished products or even the raw materials. Now, whether raw materials or finished products, the goods always are always in different states or always in different conditions. For example, there can be some other products, finished products, or the materials that you always need cold storage. Now, you as a player in that regard, or a producer, or depending on whatever you are doing in the chain, you have to make sure that at least you create a convenient way of accessing the warehouse facilities as quick as possible. So, in this case, for example, the warehouses should always be located at least closer to the rail lines or the rail road network, the post, the airports, or something like that. So, in other words, to the transportation routes, so that whenever you want to get the stuff from elsewhere, it will be easier for you to get your stuff into the warehouses, or else, if you are a producer, it will be easier for you to get the materials from the warehouses into your production house. When you are planning your logistics, make sure that the warehousing as a function has to be also given a priority, because you always want quick access to the materials, and of course your finished products should not be very far from where you are producing them, and should not be very far from the transportation routes. Warehousing as one pillar. Another important pillar also here is demand forecasting. Demand forecasting. Now, when we are saying demand forecasting, that is predicting demand. In other words, that is it. So, logistics, in this case, relies heavily on inventory demand forecasting to ensure that business never runs short on core or high demand products or materials, and never ties up capital unnecessarily in their warehouse goods with sluggish sales either. Demand forecasting, that is forecasting or predicting demand. This is very, very important in as far as effective logistics is concerned. How? Okay. Logistics managers must always forecast, as they are working hand in hand with some other sections in an organization or some other departments in an organization, should be able to forecast the demand that will be there probably in the next 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, and so on and so forth. So that when they are stocking the materials, when they are stocking the, in this case the materials, they should stock the materials that will match the demand that they are forecasting. So they should not stock too much. Why? Because if they stock too much beyond the limits of the demand, they will consume warehouse space that will be costing them for nothing, and probably some of the materials may end up getting spoiled or expiring. Why? Because they are not being used. So depending on the demand that we've seen out there, the materials should be procured at least proportionately to that particular demand. Again, demand forecasting helps to avoid understocking. So understocking, that is, you're stocking the materials, but you are not able to meet the demand. And the result is that one will result into disruption of the production and of course disappointing your customers at the end of the day. So it is always a good for logistics managers to make sure that they employ this what we call logistics, inventory demand forecasting, to avoid those unnecessary inconveniences, overstocking or understocking. Then we have another pillar here. This one we call it inventory management. So by using inventory management techniques to plan ahead for an increased demand in seasonal or training products, companies can keep profits higher and make inventory turns faster. Meaning the ratio of how many times you sell and replace inventory in a set period. Conversely, by noting slowing inventory turns on the other products, a company can better determine when to offer discount pricing or other incentives. Inventory management here, somewhat is similar to demand forecasting. You have your inventory in your warehouses or the finished products in your warehouses. Those ones, they have to be managed properly. Now, the inventory, we are saying these are now the finished products that have been produced and they are ready for the market. Those responsible for inventory management, they have to make sure that at least they are balancing the stock levels in there. The producers, or probably you have the machine guys who are producing something there, should not overproduce it, because you also have to see the demand, how the market is performing out there. Therefore, whatever is being produced here should be matching the demand that is out there, so that to avoid overproduction. Because if you overproduce, at the end of the day, you reduce even the prices of your products, because you just want to get rid of them. So you end up into losses. So the inventory must always be managed properly. The levels of the inventory in your warehouses, in your storage facilities, normally has to be well balanced, so that you are also able to hold the prices and balance them. That is another pillar. Now, we've seen the pillar. Then somebody will come in and say, you are saying logistics management. You are saying each one of those functions should be managed, should be monitored. Why is this one important? Why is this one important? So the question is, what are the benefits of logistics management? What are the benefits of logistics management? We have a number of them. Now, it is the same as saying, I don't know if you might have observed, to say, in Malawi, unlike in some other countries that are at least advanced kind of course maybe here in Malawi also people are doing, but we are not there yet. Whenever there are artists, musicians, or imba, amakarandi is set up, you can manager mwini wa artist uchi ndi umakanga tuna mtoto wapangwa haya kama wachita kulembedwa ntchito ndi risk management. In some countries that one has always been the trend for some time, and zimaenda mnungi. That's why you see an artist akukabe pansika for a longer period of time. Unlike in a situation whereby you do everything by yourself, you are an accountant yourself, you are the manager yourself, you are the songwriter yourself, you are the singer, you are whatsoever. Most of the times, that's what happens here, but you don't go very far. So in other words, you need kind of a management for the sustainability of whatever you're doing, for the effectiveness of whatever you're doing, and of course, efficiency of whatever you are doing. Mind you, there's a key word here. Management is more or less like monitoring something. Now, you cannot monitor yourself. Somebody has to monitor you. amweni mene maindira moja angena makona ndinga mwana mutamaenda slow down pamama mene mapangira zakuti I think is that one. So somebody is monitoring you and is giving you advice, checks and balances, you know, that is management. So because of that you are able to do that particular thing successfully. So in logistics it's the same. These logistics functions, you and your organization, probably you can buy your own truck and do the delivery of stuff and everything. But since there is nobody to monitor you, you have no monitoring system or no monitoring tool, the chances that you can go off track are higher without you knowing. You realize after some time that you derailed a long time back. So a need for management. Now, if there is management, if there is the logistics is being managed, there is always a greater chance of visibility within the market. So one benefit is visibility. Logistics management affords greater visibility into the supply chain. Take note of that one. This visibility enables businesses to better control costs, ease out inefficiencies, spot supply chain problems, conduct demand planning, and many other advantages. So, visibility. In other words, if your activities are well managed, you stand out among many. You become visible. By and by, you gain the market share by the end of the day. So one benefit is visibility. Another benefit here that we get from logistics management is reduced overheads. It helps to reduce overheads. Or in other words, overheads are unnecessary costs that at times you incur unknowingly. So if you are doing something without planning, without monitoring, the chances are you can end up spending a lot without you knowing. At the end of the day, you'll be surprised you are not making profits. And you think somebody is stealing from you. I started my business with 10 million, but now when I look around, I'm given 5 million. Why? Because there are some overheads, there are things that you are spending unknowingly. Why? Because there was no management mechanisms in place. So, having logistics management mechanisms in place, those unnecessary costs can be reduced or can be avoided. Another exciting benefit that comes out of logistics management is improved customer experience. Improved customer experience. Mind you, in a business, you also need to get feedback from the customers or from your clients. So, the moment you are getting the feedback, whether it's negative or it's positive, if it is positive, it encourages you. You say, okay, let me do more. If it is negative, it helps you to go back and work on those weaknesses. So, only if you have better logistics management systems in place, your customers are going to realize better experience. Now, what's the importance of having a customer experience or an improved customer experience? If the customers have a better experience with you or the services that you offer, the chances are tomorrow they will come again. Apart from coming again, they will also tell others. And by the end of the day, you'll be expanding your customer base. By expanding your customer base, you're getting more and more income. The more you're getting more income, you expand your shareholder value or the size of your business, thereby enlarging or expanding your market share. You started probably with 2% or probably less than 1% of the market share, but by having these management mechanisms in place, by and by, you will find that you are enlarging your territory on the market, or the market share is growing, because the customers are getting an improved experience. Service here. So better customer experience. See, customers at times you are being taken away or carried away by smaller things. Zinthu zooneka ngati kuti mna mwake anthu ena sangaziganize kuti ndi value zimakhala ndi value. For example, you go to a restaurant, upita kumene kuja, you find kuti mna mwake mwapeza kandasika nakanyamata mna kupita ntchito kumene koko achiona kuti they don't even know how to smile, they can't even greet you, they can't do whatever. Even when you ask for something, kuchito kanga tuchitoka kabisa sakufuna. Okay, but wafika kale, you can eat, you can have your meals there, off you go. The chances are next time you know I can come back. Then you go to the next restaurant, you find beautiful girls that are there, they are smiling at you. You always want to, that is, they are only giving you that experience that you should feel like you are at home. Next time, if you want to eat out, of course, those are nice people, very nice people. I think I need to go there again, So that is customer experience. So this is just an example. So with customer experience, customers will always stick to you, they'll be loyal, and you attract more customers and get market share. So another benefit that we get from logistics management is the prevention of losses. The prevention of losses. So now these losses are not only specifically in terms of the profits and all, because tagambaza reduced overheads, management, you end up spending more than you spend. At the end of the day, even the physical loss of your goods or your consignments, you have lost the track, you are not even tracking. Why? Because there were no proper management mechanisms in place. But if there were proper mechanisms of tracking your goods or following up with the goods, you'll be able to tell or say, no, I don't know what you're why? Because you have systems in place. So those losses are always reduced. At times, if you do not have proper monitoring, let's say you have your warehouses or your cold storages, and in there, whatever you're keeping in there, monitoring you might be temperature, you end up getting supplies one day, you go there, why? Because monitor warehouse yangu kabla ma cold rooms yangu zitukazisonga kodi zikuenda bwana temperature yepese tikuite just an example my warehouse ma kodi ma connection ya amagesi aliwanje you run into risks of fire. Why? Because you never paid much attention to whatever was happening in your warehouses. So by having proper management mechanisms of managing these facilities, you can prevent unnecessary losses. And another thing, which is also a benefit that you get from logistics management, is it supports business expansion. It supports business expansion. Nobody wants to be small in terms of whatever you're doing, in terms of your business endeavors. Ali samafuna amene amayamba business amafuna atachita bwino kana business yake itafika mulingo ina wali ndipo normal wanu kafika pansika paja we look at anthu amene muna anafika kale amene zikuayendera anafika mulingo wina, you always say nditalisisa ndizafike ngati awo. So it is always the desire of each and every business person to expand in whatever they are doing. Now this expansion can be brought in if you are able to satisfy your customers, as I just mentioned. If you are able to give them best experience ever, they will remain loyal to you, they will tell others, and the business will expand. This can only be possible if each one of the activities that we mentioned, you are being given priority and given attention. So logistics management can help in expanding your business. At first, I said something like we are living in a competitive business environment where there is stiff competition. Business players are always very aggressive. Iniyo mugafika pansiga ndukaika shop yanu apa kabuna bench yanu, your neighbors of course akulandirani akulandirani amali echenja gamna mune akulandirani plaza memo timakaja uko adoro sense koma ngati mugulisa katundu ofanana ndi awawo suti awawo makomera ndikukondwa because you are competitive awaso ndi afuna endeleze, so they can smile at you but deep down they are not happy with you, not you as a person but what you are doing here. So that's the kind of competition that is there on the market. So you need to employ some skills, some kind of expertise that will help you to stand out, to be ahead of them. So by becoming more competitive amongst many, we say you are having a competitive edge. So another benefit is that of competitive edge. Delivering orders correctly and on time is a foundation element in the customer experience. Delivering orders correctly and of course in time, this is a foundational element in the customer experience. Ali sama funa na hemene wagula chintu chika waodesa chintu chibwere mu nthawi yake. So this one is my concept customer kukhulupirirani amuna next time aza kutumenizo azinzake zama zozota ngati mufuna kuodesa chintu kana mufuna kuitanisa chintu awa sakumuditsa amapereka chintu cha kamuna mabweresa mu nthawi yake. So that's competitive edge. We're together on that one, eh? Now we are proceeding. What we are going to discuss next is of course something which is very simple and straightforward. So probably we are not going to take much of our time. You are a producer here. You are producing something very beautiful, very delicious, very appealing. Let's say you are somebody who is baking some cakes. You are a cake maker. So you have made this cake which is so good and so nice, so beautiful. But if this cake, if you are not able to take it to the customer, the one who needs it, or the one who can consume it, after 2-3 days it will be useless. So no matter how much the materials you are putting there, that will be a loss to you, right? That will be a loss to you. So the basic idea behind what we call supply chain here, and of course logistics in this case, is to make sure that the goods reach where they are supposed to reach. Now, I've given an example of a cake. If you go to those people who are responsible for this, others, they have already made cakes. They display there, you see. Others are designed as wedding cakes. Others are designed as birthday cakes. Others are designed as what, and a lot of things, you know. Meaning to say, there are some products that are specifically made for certain kind of consumers. So, of course, the consumers, whenever they are pressing an order, they press an order and they specify the exact product that they want. We're together on that one, eh? So our mother in the birthday party, definitely they will tell you mulibangire birthday cake. Kayako zandu mwirembe sina zake zimakaya nyuki. Ngatili wedding cake, they will tell you to say, you know what, tibangireni wedding cake. They will be specific. Now, for you who is supposed to deliver or to make that cake, you have to make sure that you make a cake and you deliver according to what those people have demanded. Alright, so what I was saying here is the main goal of logistics management. Now, the main goal of logistics management is to fulfill the 7 R's. So that's why I was saying what we're going to discuss here is simple and direct and straightforward here. The 7 R's in logistics. That's the main goal of logistics globally. Now, what are those 7 R's? One is the delivering of the right product. Delivering of the right product. That's why I was bringing in that example of a cake to say, okay, somebody needs a wedding cake. You cannot prepare a the cake and deliver to them. Say, you know what? Thank you so much that you are getting married. So here is the cake. No, that's not the right product. So that's the first thing. Now, delivering the product that was ordered according to specifications, color, size, brand, quantity, etc. But also consider an automated maintenance plan where manufacturers use IoT data to send a just-in-time replacement part. Okay, that one is not very important. So that one you just have to keep in mind. Now, for you to deliver the right product, it starts from understanding the order that was that you received. So you received an order, you check the product that these people are demanding, the specification, the color, and of course the quantity. Now, that was the first R. Then we have another R here, which is right quantity. The right quantity, that's another R. Is either an item can be purchased as either single unit or in packs of 12, which are also considered as a unit, on a larger scale, on a smaller scale, and all those other things. So knowing the quantity will help you to deliver to satisfy the customer. The customer will only be satisfied if he has been given what he or she demanded. And it can also be possible to say they demanded 20 crates of eggs. You're a farmer here. Now, as you are going to deliver there, since this is entirely unfold, others they tried to push you and they assisted you to finally put. But you only realize to say some of the mazira, asweka, abangama cracks and all. Definitely, if you are taking these ones to the customer, the chances are customer cannot. So you haven't achieved one goal of logistics. Why? Because the goal we are saying is to fulfill the 7 R's. So in this case, right condition. So the third R is right condition. The goods must always reach the consumer in a right condition. Another R here is the right place. Let's say you are based here, and if you give me instructions to say, okay, I have to go and deliver 1 geo. That is, if that is the agreement, I cannot come and deliver in here. So I have to deliver at the right place. So we have seen that it should be the right product, the right quantity, in the right condition, at the right place. If I fail to meet these conditions, the danger is I may end up damaging or spoiling the relations between I and, of course, you. So I have to make sure that I retain and maintain cordial relations between I and my customers. So for this to happen, I have to make sure that I religiously or strictly understand the needs of the customer. Where does he or she need his goods to be delivered to. I have to understand, and I have to deliver exactly at that particular place. Then another thing here is, I have understood the kind of goods that are needed. I have understood the quantity, and of course I have processed the right quantity, and of course I am sure I'm going to deliver while in good condition, and of course I'm going to deliver at the right place. But now the guy wanted the goods to be delivered on Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, but due to some other things that I'm doing, I need to take care of course, I need to take my son to school, I need to take care of my wife, I need to do ABCD. Anyway, I'm going to deliver these things on Saturday. Yet the person needed the goods on Wednesday. Definitely, I've reached an agreement here. This one is going to spoil our business relationship between I and this person. So one error has been compromised here, and this one is right time. So make sure you are delivering at the right place, at the same time, at the right time, or within the right time. You know, because okay, somebody can say at least mwakatungi mlibeli say wiki ino, at least wiki ino isate. In fact, preferably right that. Kumabe wiki ino isate, you can see. So you can understand it to say, okay, I've failed on Wednesday, but probably I can deliver on Friday or Thursday because wiki has nadhani sinate. So delivering at the right time or within the reasonable time period as stipulated in the contract that you are signing. Now, we have this what you call order mix-ups. We have what we call order mix-ups. This one also happens that somebody is delivering goods to different customers. Mina wabangira nyamata is it Amazon kandi Alibaba. Muna order zintu kumene ma order. Now the guy when he was kushika ni muvani mwake afika kwao muna order Sabato za notice akuta so muna order mabagi zimachitika zimezo. Then you say no come on, it's not all it is. It's nowadays. Please. Okay, yeah. You know, so the person will say, sorry, naita mix. I think it's this. But what if it's not so called instead of kumene is not called dispatchable? It becomes problematic. Then you return the thing. No, nowadays you can lose money along the way, and the direct consequence to this business is that you lose the trust of your customers. Actually, they are not organized. So it is always imperative to fulfill this other which is right customer, to avoid mix-ups. So order mix-ups, address errors, and other mishaps communicate lack of respect for the customer. If they do this, it shows there is lack of respect for the customer. So make sure you pay attention to detail so that customer anaona hii address yake ndio unamba kingi timutsara tikampasa. And finally on these errors we have the right price. Ndengo when in the right price. It is important that your pricing be competitive for the geographical area and the industry to turn your inventory regularly at a good margin. Ufuwa malonda aliyense alindu ufuwa malonda aliyense malonda ondi yake aliso ndu ufuwa chacha ntengo mine yakuonera siyo ncho. But at times zimateka una kuti ntengo mine ukuchaja ndona kuti ukugwesa weka business one because it's too low, you're not going to realize profits, or else you are going to scare away the customers. Instead makastomers kutawa chikagule kuja I think it's because kumadula kwambi that one puts you at a disadvantage. So the pricing should always be convenient with your market and of course the geographical area. But at the same time, you also have to make sure that you are acting within a fair competition market, or you are playing your trade within a fair, you are involved in fair practices, because the chances are your friends, your colleagues that you are dealing with can kick you out of the market. Say, I'm cheapest of people. No, you say you might southern level. You know, where's a 20 level for I so it works to your disadvantage. So make sure the pricing should be suitable, for the geographical area, the market as it is, to make sure that there is a fair competition, but at the same time making sure that you are keeping yourself afloat. You are still in the market, business mukupangabi. Okay. Now let us look at this other thing also. After we have seen benefits, why we need logistics management in place, what are the benefits that we get from there, let us look at some of the problems and of course probably the challenges associated with logistics. One is the fuel costs. That is one of the most common and outstanding challenges. The fuel costs. So, mostly the transportation costs are determined by the cost of fuel globally, elsewhere we go. So whenever there is an adjustment in the cost of fuels, say diesel or petrol or whatever fuels we use, we automatically expect adjustments in some other the prices of some other products also, or commodities also. That is given and straightforward as it is. And that's why whenever tikambona ati mafuta akweza mtengo, timachita kuziwira atu kunakuta apapaso kutamiso zitani zikwera. So one challenge that is affecting this function called logistics is the uncertainties of the changes in fuel costs, or the uncertainties in fuel costs. This one is a challenge. Another challenge that is associated with logistics is business process improvements. Business process improvements. So, let me say something on this one. In today's world, where there is a variety of products on the market, the consumers are becoming more, if not too much, demanding, or they are becoming more arrogant because we are demanding so much. So it is up to the business players to make sure that they are catching up with that kind of a demand. For example, let's look at the internet technologies. We have had what they call 2G. They say what 2G connectivity. Then after some time say no 3G connectivity or 4G connectivity. Others 5G connectivity. It is us, the customers, who are demanding the better or best or improved qualities of things. They improve the qualities of whatever products that are there on the market. So for a company to catch up with these demands, it needs to employ probably latest technologies or state-of-the-art technologies, which are more oftenly expensive. These technologies are always expensive. So for a company to catch up with that one, it becomes a challenge. We are living in a world that is so demanding. The customers are becoming more demanding. We are becoming more arrogant. So this one puts pressure on the business players to make sure that they employ latest technologies and meet your demands. Another thing that is a challenge also, and is related to this one, in improved business processes, is improved customer service. The same, we are becoming too demanding even when it comes to customer service. we demand a lot from the service providers. That one alone puts pressure to these or on these business players so that they meet the demands or our demands in terms of customer servicing. Another challenge that we can also see here is global economic meltdowns or global economic downturns. Kabina kusenda kuno kwa chuma, kabina kulikuwa kwa chuma. Is easy. These global economic downturns put a lot of pressure on business players because they find it hard to catch up with the demands from their customers. Okay, whenever the economy slows down, it means probably production of some other goods also slows down. Whenever the production of some other goods slows down, definitely the activities of those that are specifically into logistics functions as their business are also affected. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic period, it reached a point where most countries, they suspended operations of many businesses. They shut down. We reached that point where we were saying we have total shutdowns of businesses and some other economic activities in many countries, lockdowns and all that. Due to such shutdowns, it means production of some goods and products was slowed or stopped altogether. So those people who are responsible for transportation, warehousing, whatever, their chito is all about logistics. Those people, they suffered a lot. So when the economy is not performing, the economy is not doing good, those that are responsible for logistics also suffer. So that's another problem that is always there. Another thing that affects also logistics as a sector is government regulations. We can also consider that one as a challenge or something that affects this one. So, for example, the carriers, those that are responsible for running the vessels, the ships at all, they have to make sure that from time to time they follow government regulations, guidelines, and all those things. And of course, if you violate any of those regulations, at times you are subjected to penalties and all that. So the governments can be changing or revising their regulations, rules and laws from time to time. That one alone puts pressure on these carriers or these operators that are into logistics. Why? Because they have to make sure that they are following kuli malamula sinta bwanji or ati malamula wa sinta ngasiri kwatsatira ndekuti will be penalized. So those are some of the things zimama kakuziganizira pafupi. Then we have environmental issues. Environmental issues are now also becoming kind of problematic when it comes to logistics functions. So when you are standing in the shoes of those that are into logistics and all, you can consider those environmental issues as being problematic. But now, if you stand in the shoes of a common man, or else from the government's shoes, you understand that those are not issues at all. Why? Because those people that are into logistics, for example, the transporters, are the ones who are contributing the most to environmental degradation through the fumes, the oils, and everything. So pollution greatly is being contributed by these people that are in the logistics business also. It is believed all over the ships that sail along the seas globally, they produce millions and millions of tons of carbon gases into the atmosphere annually. So those tons of fumes or tons of carbon gases, they are there. They are the ones that are responsible for what we call global warming and all these other problems we are complaining today. So when you stand in the shoes of these ones, they sit and say, guys, abo mada dabesa lamulo kutakuti ngati tingamachite produce mafumes ochuka moto tizilipira so much as a fine, it becomes kind of a problem for them. But that is it. So some other challenges or problems that are associated with logistics are, for example, the technology strategy and implementation of those strategies, fragmented communication, unknown supply chain risks, and of course dealing with climate change issues. Dealing with climate change issues. This is another challenge that is associated with logistics. For example, let's look at the ships or the vessels. Normally, those vessels are designed in such a way that they can be docking at this kind of a port and not this kind of a port. So even the ports themselves are designed in such a way that they will be able to handle such kind of vessels and not such kind of vessels. Now, depending on the water levels in the seas or in the water bodies through which they sail, a ship can manage to sail in that sea or in that ocean, or cannot manage to sail. So water levels at times do change, do fluctuate. We have heard, you might have heard to say, in some big seas, we call them high seas, those big oceans, water levels haven't been stable lately. At times they rise, at times they go down. And whenever they rise, it means it becomes problematic when it comes to the functionalities of the ports. Now, one reason why the high seas are having their waters rising, the water levels rising, is the melting of the ice in the polar regions. For example, we say in the North Pole, we have Antarctic, is it Arctic? Okay, Arctic is over there. Then we have Antarctic region on the other side. Those regions are full of ice. Now, due to what we call global warming or the rising in global temperatures, those ice blocks there are melting. Now, as they are melting, the water is now filling the high seas, thereby raising the water levels in those high seas. Now, the rising of water levels in those high seas makes it difficult or it affects the navigability of those water bodies. So those are some of the challenges that are associated with logistics. And of course, we can add many others. For example, some unknown supply chain risks. We know issues to do with pirates, isn't it? Pirates, not Orlando Pirates in South Africa, but those people, criminals who always go there by the sea, attacking the ships, the vessels, rob them, maybe holding the crew hostage, and they demand some ransom from the ship owners. Those are some of the risks. Those are some of the problems that is affecting this logistics sector of the economy in the supply chain. So ship owners, or we call them the liners, ocean liners, are forced to spend a lot of money to boost their security so as to secure their vessels against those attackers, those pirates. Of course, notably the Somalian pirates. These are some of the people who are causing trouble, who are causing havoc. Yeah, so far, these are some of the challenges associated with logistics that we have seen today. I wish if we stop there unless there is something to add, to ask, or to contribute.